Admissions in California universities have become a black box, and some parents are wondering whether race is a major factor in admissions in universities in California. Our guest today is Nan Zhong, whose son couldn't get into any of the UC universities in California, but he was able to get a job at Google at the age of 18 at a PhD level graduate. He also tells us why he is suing the California universities.
The person working on the case study asked Stanley, would you like to work for Amazon? And I would recommend you to a position that's higher than the entry level, given what we see you're doing. Amazon recognized that his ability and his achievement is above regular college graduate. The college is saying, well, thanks for applying. You're not good enough for undergrad admission.
I'm Siamak Korami. Welcome to California Insider. Nan, it's great to have you on. Welcome.
Glad to be here.
We want to talk to you about your case. So your son was a really good student. He applied to different universities, really good universities, and he didn't get in. At the same time, he got a job offer from Google. Can you tell us what happened, how you guys weren't able to get into these universities in California and beyond?
Yeah, so we are just almost like any other parent, assumed the academic credentials would probably matter a lot in this process. And he does have a pretty good record in terms of academic credentials, not only just in school in terms of GPA, in terms of SAT. For example, he scored 1590 on the SAT without much preparation. He didn't use any paid tutoring or any paid prep service. He just
1590, like
1590, yeah.
Almost perfect. Right?
Before the actual SAT, he scored a perfect one on PSAT without any preparation. He just showed up at an exam and got everything correct. And then on the actual PSAT, I guess maybe he snapped somehow and got 1590. He just had a few nights of self-study. So he's always been very strong academically. And he's also very active in school activities. For example, he's the founder and founding members and second president of his school's computing club, and organize kids to participate in coding contests. By the way, he's always been interested in coding contests from very early on. On top of that, if people are talking about holistic review, I thought his extracurriculum is also super strong. For example, he advances to the semifinal of Google Code Jam, which is an annual coding contest that's really targeting professionals worldwide. And he advanced round after round, got to top 400 in the world. And for a high schooler, at that point he was only age 15. For a high schooler to achieve
so he was top 400 in the world?
In the world among professionals.
In this Google contest?
In this Google contest, worldwide contest.
At the age of 15?
At age 15, yeah. So he has been compiling this kind of credentials all along for his high school years. And he was not really aiming for anything, he just loves it. For example, he had a hard time getting up in the morning to make it to school. So that's always something he struggles with. But he had no problem getting up at 3 a.m. to participate in the coding contest hosted in Russia, hosted in India, because you have to do that in real time. Everybody's solve the problems together around the world. So he just loves doing this, and he taught himself completely on his own. Somebody assumed that, hey, his dad works in the same field. Maybe his dad taught him. Not a single day. I gave him a book. He didn't even open it. It's been sitting in his room collecting dust, and he just learned the whole thing on his own. And by, I think, around age 15, I was really curious about what he does in coding contest. So I was like, hey, let's go toe-to-toe, and I'll compete against you in a coding contest. So one Sunday morning, I did the same coding contest together with him simultaneously. By the time I finished the first one, the easiest one, because they're serious problems and they're increasingly difficult. It gets more and more difficult towards the end. By the time I finished the first one, he already finished all 5 problems.
Wow.
So at that point, even though I'm a professional, I've been doing this for 20, 30 years as a professional, I knew he's in a different league already at that point. So I always assumed that when he's applying to computer science, he has a very strong credential to give him a good chance. On top of that, he also received the highest level of Presidential Volunteer Service Award because he and his friends put together a program offering free coding lessons to kids in underserved communities. So over the course of 2 years, they taught about 500 kids in California, Washington, and Texas. So I thought that was, I'm not a college counselor. I don't know how it runs, but I assumed, hey, this looks pretty good. At least that's what I assumed. So he managed the college application process on his own. We just thought we were going to get some interesting results, but then one after another, he got rejected. The ones that are really puzzling us are the state schools because we live in California. So he applied to 5 UC campuses, and that's UCLA, UC Berkeley, UC San Diego, UC Santa Barbara, and UC Davis, and a couple of, I believe also California State University. And without exception, all of them reject him. So that makes me really scratch my head. It's like, what kind of students are they admitting? How many of those students can advance to Google Code Jam?
All of those schools rejected him.
All of them rejected him.
Even Santa Barbara, the easier
Santa Barbara,
ones.
Davis. There's one also in California State, also rejected him. And of course, he got rejected by the other ones, the more elite ones like MIT, Stanford. He got rejected by University of Illinois, University of Wisconsin. There are a few ones. In total, he applied to 18 and got rejected by 16 of them, including those ones I mentioned. So this result came back as quite a surprise. And he did receive 2 admissions, and that was University of Texas at Austin and University of Maryland. And he was going to University of Texas. He was already at the orientation in Austin when he got the email from Google saying, we'd like to interview you. And this has to trace back a little bit. So maybe let me zoom back. The reason he got this email goes back several years. As I mentioned, he loves coding. He does a lot of online coding contests. And a lot of them are for professionals, not just for high schoolers. And he did well in a lot of those coding contests that his profile was pretty high up there. And one day out of blue, I think when he was about 13 years old, he got an email from a Google recruiter. And the Google recruiter was saying, hey, we noticed your online coding performance. Would you like to work for Google? We can offer you a full-time position. And Stanley replied saying—
At the age of 13.
Well, Google did not know.
Google did not
know. So Stanley replied, I'd love to have an interview with Google, but by the way, I'm only 13. Is that going to be a problem? And the recruiter says, well, that is going to be a problem because legally we cannot hire minors. So unfortunately, we can't interview you because even if you pass it, we cannot really hire you. So why don't we circle back when you turn 18? So that's the first interaction he had with Google, that out of blue email from Google recruiter somehow was paying attention to his online coding performance. So that was the first round of interaction with Google. And after that, of course, nothing happened for several years. He was very passionate about helping people with his coding skills. So when the pandemic hit in 2020, he read a story on NPR about how the unemployment office was unable to handle the surge of demand because people are losing jobs, they're filing unemployment applications, and the system was coded in COBOL, an ancient computing programming language that was back in the 1950s. So nobody was able to fix the system anymore because the people who are capable of writing code in this language have all retired and long gone. So the unemployment office had to invite them back out of their retirement. And there's a consultancy called the COBOL Cowboys in Texas that was featured in the story about how they're coming out of their retirement, like the Space Cowboy movie. So they call them COBOL Cowboys to come back to the rescue these guys. And after seeing that story, Stanley learned COBOL on his own, put the code on GitHub, and sent his sample code to the CEO of COBOL Cowboys and saying, hey, I know you guys are helping the folks to get the benefit or whatever they need. I'm only 14 years old, but I taught myself COBOL. Here's my code. I'd like to volunteer. Is there anything I can help with? The CEO actually called him back saying, I looked at the code. I really appreciate it. This is nice code. But again, we're a consulting business. If I tell my client, I'm going to put a 14-year-old on your project, they're going to freak out. So I appreciate your help, but we cannot use your help. But good luck, he gave him a lot of encouraging words. So that was one of his attempts to help during the pandemic using his coding skills. Of course, it did not pan out. And after that, he noticed there was the story about DocuSign stock going through the roof because people are locked at home. They cannot meet in person to sign documents anymore, so they have to resort to electronic signing to get the documents signed, to transact things, and so on. So there's a lot of demand. There's a huge increase of demand for e-signing. And he looked at it. It's like, why aren't these guys lowering their price, or at least temporarily offer some relief when people are so struggling with the situation given the pandemic? He looked at DocuSign, looked at the other e-signing companies. None of them is doing any relief. None of them is offering any help in that strange time that we lived through. And his reaction was that, can I make one that's free? Can I help those folks by giving them something that they don't have to pay for? This doesn't look too difficult to do. So he did it. So he created his own e-signing service. He called it RapidSign and put it on the web. There was not a whole lot of attention initially, but because he built it on Amazon Web Services, or AWS, Amazon Web Services has this program called well-architected review. So basically, they come in and examine how well you're using AWS services, whether things are built in a secure way, whether you're using the resources in an efficient manner. So after they went through a review of RapidSign, they came out with a report. And that report concluded saying this is one of the most efficient and secure account they had ever reviewed. And this is AWS. And this is somebody that has seen like thousands, if not millions, of applications built on AWS. So that really validated the quality of his work. And on top of that, the person who was working on the report said, we're going to recommend this for a case study. And that's something even hard to achieve for professionals. And by creating this e-signing service on his own, in addition to all his high school workload, he's now given the chance to be featured on an Amazon Web Service case study. And the person working on the case study, at the end of the case study, asked Stanley, would you like to work for Amazon? And I would recommend you to a position that's higher than the entry level, given what we see you're doing. So we're going to recommend to, I think in Amazon's hierarchy was called L5 position. So that is a notch higher than a position somebody fresh out of college would get. So that's Amazon recognized that his ability and his achievement is above regular college graduate. And since he was already about to have this interview with Amazon, that reminded him his conversation years back with Google. So he circled back to Google saying, hey, I'm about to turn 18. By the way, Amazon is interviewing me. Would you like to schedule an interview? And you know how it goes. Usually when there's competition, the companies move really quickly. So shortly after that, Google started to scheduling interview with him. He had a phone interview and probably did well because he moved on to the next stage. And that's where at the orientation in Austin, he got this email from Google saying, we're going to schedule a full day.
As he was going to go to the University of Texas in Austin.
Yeah, he was, well, he has to go somewhere, right? If the other ones reject him, he has to pick one of the two that accepted his application. So that's when he got this email from Google. And Google said, we're going to schedule a full day interview with you for a full-time position. And that was the last day to withdraw without penalty. So he made a decision to drop on the spot. It was a gutsy call because Google's interview actually is quite difficult. Some of the numbers I saw was like single-digit acceptance rate, probably harder than a lot of the elite colleges. And he was quite confident. Well, being 17 at that time, he just said, okay, I'm going to drop out. I'm going to, in more accurate terms, like I'm going to take a gap year. I'm going to take a gap year. I'm going to take a chance to interview with Google. A few weeks later, Google said, you did well in the interview. We're going to offer you L4 level position, which is roughly equivalent to Amazon's L5. So what that position means is that position is usually offered for people, if they're fresh out of school, fresh out of university, they usually have to have a PhD degree to get to that level. So on one hand, Google, after spending 10 hours interviewing him on not only the technical coding skills, but also communication and the whole set of the skills, saying, we'd like to hire this person for a PhD level job. The college is saying, well, thanks for applying. You're not good enough for undergrad admission. So the gap between the two is a little bit too big to reconcile by any measure. So we're scratching our head and not sure what to make of it. So we shared the story in a local WeChat group. We live in Palo Alto, so there's a parent group in Palo Alto on WeChat with about maybe 400 people in it. So share a story saying, hey, we've heard anecdotal stories in the past that how Asian kids face a really high bar when applying to colleges, but we didn't realize it's as high as this, as absurd as this. And here's our son's story. He applied, got rejected by 16, and yet he was offered a full-time job position at Google that usually requires a PhD degree.
And what was going through your mind when you got those rejection letters from the UC schools and California schools?
I did not see them one at a time because he managed the process. To be honest, to this day, I barely understand the college application process. There's some EA or early admission or those acronyms. He explained it to me once. I asked him, well, if I forgot, asked him to explain to me one more time as a teenager. He just ignored me. So to this day, I'm still not sure about all these terminologies in college application. So he was managing on his own. And initially I thought maybe by February, by March, we would hear some, he would say, hey, okay. Yeah, good news, I'm admitted here. Nothing. Oh, he just quiet. So one day I finally said, how's it going? He was like, I got rejected by all these schools. I was like, what? What the hell's going on here? Because we recently had certain amount of expectation given his credentials, given his extracurricular activities and all of that. And so we thought some of the schools are supposedly the safety schools, but apparently maybe not so much. And then maybe at that point when we were doubting ourselves, maybe there's something we just don't understand about the college application. Maybe as parents, maybe we just have a skewed view of our kids because every parent does that to some degree. So I'm somewhat of aware that I could have a bias in there. But then a few months later, Google hired him for a PhD level position. So I guess I'm not that crazy thinking that he had a good chance of getting into some of the colleges.
Did you hear much from the colleges? Did you try to reach out to them by any chance?
We did. So after the story, we shared in a WeChat group, and to our surprise, it's like a spark in a tinderbox. It just exploded. So within 24 hours, I knew that the story has spread coast to coast, just from that one post in the local WeChat group. The reason I knew that is because I started getting phone calls from friends from all over the place in the US. We lived in several different places in the US, so we have friends all over the place. They moved, we moved. So I started getting calls from friends in New York, Florida, Chicago, and I also got a call from a friend in UAE, so somehow I even got to Middle East. So that was surprising to me because we heard anecdotally how hard Asian kids have faced higher bars in college admission. But sounds like stories like this really strikes a chord that people have seen this in their community, and this story really resonated with them. And I also started getting emails from people that I don't know about their kids' application situation. equally shocking. There were kids winning international awards. Stanley at least got 2 admissions out of 18. There was a kid, I remember very clearly, fairly similar credential, if not stronger than Stanley's, rejected by every single college that he applied.
Wow.
He ended up, I think, ended up going to a community college. So apparently this is not an isolated incident, and the community has had enough of it for a long time, and this sort of became the explosion point that people sort of said, this is getting ridiculous.
Is it mostly Asians that reach out to you or other races?
Mostly Asians, yeah, mostly Asians. There certainly is some amount of bias because we share the news in the WeChat group, which is heavily Chinese. So there's some bias built into that. But based on the report I got from the other parents, it's mostly the Asian kids that faces really absolutely high bar when it comes to college admission.
If you like our interviews on California Insider and the topics we cover, you will like the newspaper Epoch Times. This newspaper is very unique. Not only we cover many interesting topics, we talk to different sides of an issue and consider everybody involved in a story. Now, some stories this week that we covered in the paper include how California is about to lose 17% of its refining capacity, according to the Energy Information Administration, with a couple of refineries planning to leave California. We're following this story closely in the paper. We also had another story, how home prices in San Francisco are surging. In certain parts of downtown San Francisco are going up again. There was a poll by UC Berkeley of 6,000 Californians, Republicans, Democrats, and Independents. Most of them believe that special interests have too much power in Sacramento. We have this story in the paper this week. There are so many other interesting stories that we're covering in California, and our coverage is every day live 24/7. We're covering not only state-level issues, we are also covering international and national issues. Make sure to sign up to read these unique stories. There's a link below. You can get it at $1 a week for the first 4 weeks. Now let's go back to the interview. You came here from China, right? Did you expect this to happen here in California?
No, not at all. Not at all. For starters, I don't think there is any doubt in my mind that looking things beyond grades is a good thing. I'm not arguing for the position of, okay, let's look only at SAT, let's only look at GPA. That's the only thing that matters when it comes to college admission. I don't hold that view at all. I think it's good for the colleges to look at the students as a whole, where they're spending their time. Are they spending their time doing productive things? Or they're just busy playing video games. I'll stick it to the word top level. So basically how the kids apply themselves to do something that's meaningful. I think that's totally a reasonable thing to do and probably a good thing to do. But what I have a problem with is that I think when we started talking about holistic review, particularly how the colleges are conducting it, given the overwhelming compilation of evidence how the Asian kids with super strong qualifications are rejected left and right, I think they're not truly doing holistic review. They're using the word holistic as a smokescreen. They're hiding behind the word holistic to do arbitrary stuff. So it becomes less objective. So they can maybe play a sleight of hand to do some of the things they don't want us to see.
What do you think is the loss? So you're mentioning Google hired Stanley, and now he's at Google. What do you think is the loss to California universities?
There's a loss to some degree to a lot of folks. If nothing else, I think there was one professor out of the UC system lost a very capable research assistant. He would be a fantastic research assistant if a professor has a research program and needs somebody who can write high quality code at lightning speed. So somebody lost that. And some of his could-be fellow students have lost the chance to learn from somebody that have advanced to Google Code Jam semifinal who has scored that high in a worldwide competition. For the other Asian kids, like my younger son, it becomes a source of anxiety It's like, wow, this level of qualification can't get you into any UC campuses. What I'm gonna do? And I hate to say this, but in our community where we live, Palo Alto, with a high concentration of Asian population, Asian kids, there's been a persistent suicide problem. Of course, every case is different, and a lot of cases, you never know what exactly happened. But I think having this college application process in such a black box manner with such a high perceived level of discrimination against Asian kids certainly added anxiety to this group of kids, and certainly it's not healthy for their mental situation.
Now, Nan, you are taking a stand, right? You are suing this school
That's
system.
correct. That's correct. So we did not take that decision lightly or arrive at that decision right away. So he applied for fall 2023 admission, and he got hired by Google shortly after he turned 18 in September 2023. And the news was shared and started getting picked up by news media around October 2023. At that moment, call me naive, I harbored hope that as an academic institution, in a democracy, this is something we can have a conversation about. That's what I was hoping for. So we, together with other parents, formed a group. We started writing to the board, the UC Board of Regents. They have a bi-monthly meeting that allows public comments. So I submitted public comment and made the first comment in front of the Board of Regents in November 2023.
Did you go there physically, or
the one that held was in SoCal, so I appeared over telephone, over telephone to make the comment. And of course, my comment was also emailed to them, so they had the copy several days before the meeting, before I made the comments over the telephone. And I really had hope that somebody at UC is going to say, wow, this looks weird. Maybe we should take a look. Let's have a conversation about what's going on here. That was my hope. And certainly my expectation too. But UC was totally disappointing in that regard. So starting with the UC Board of Regents, they really did nothing other than forwarding the letter, my email, to the Office of Admissions. And I got a boilerplate response from the Director of Admissions saying, we got a lot of qualified kids, so I have to reject some of the highly qualified kids. Thanks for applying, bye-bye. That was the response, essentially. It did not touch any specifically, touch any specific situation, did not acknowledge any of the complaints from the Asian community, and basically they treat it as a non-issue and essentially tell us to get lost. So I appeared again 2 months later in front of the board again, made an even strongly worded demand asking for transparency, asking for a discussion that we can go into some of the details of the college admission process, because once they call it holistic, nobody knows how it works. They keep it opaque. They keep it as a black box. So I made my position clear that in democracy, every power should have checks and balances. Right now, UC's operation of admission operates in the black box, and that is not something we should support in democracy. Same thing, same kind of response. And then third time, I worded the message as even stronger, saying that we're not going to give up. You'd better not counting on blowing us off and hoping we're just going to go away. We're going to persist. And I think it's in response to this letter, the UC admissions office director wrote something about your accusation of racial discrimination is unfounded because that's against the law. And upon reading that, I paused for a few seconds trying to parse it. So they're saying, I'm accusing them breaking the law, but that's impossible because I'm accusing them breaking the law. And that is just a position so absurd. It's such an weird argument. So at that point, I realized there's no chance, no hope that we can actually have a meaningful conversation with them. They're so entrenched in their position that they're going to continue doing this unless we force them through legal means. And that's where we started talking with other parents about how to file the lawsuit.
And what was that process like?
Well, I have no legal background whatsoever. That made it interesting. Of course, we started talking to lawyers. I started emailing legal resources, and initially, again, call me naive, knowing nothing about this landscape, I emailed the ACLU, I emailed the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and a few other civil rights organizations. All of them, without exception, either never replied or sent a general rejection letter saying we're not going to take your case. So that was the first wall we hit. And then once I started to realize how polarized or how politicized this space is, because I started looking at the Harvard case, right? I heard about Harvard case before, but now we're talking about the lawsuit. So I studied the Harvard lawsuit more closely, including going through the entire Supreme Court opinion, both the majority opinion and the dissenting opinion. I started to realize how polarized this issue is in the country. And apparently, I also look at the amicus brief filed to the Supreme Court, looking at who's for supporting Harvard, who's against Harvard. And I started to realize, wow, all these ones that I tried to get help from, they're on Harvard's side. So no wonder they're not replying to me. And then we started looking at the people who were on the opposite side in the Harvard case, who filed the brief with the Supreme Court in support of SFFA, Students for Fair Admission, who sued Harvard. That was the second surprise. So I talked to some of them. They are very sympathetic to the case. They think this case is an obvious demonstration of how UC is actually still secretly using race in its mission, even though on paper they claim we're not doing it. But this is a clear indicator that they're still doing it, probably in a secret way. But they're not taking the case either because they worry the courts in California are going to be too biased for us to possibly win. And therefore, they worry this could just be a waste of their time and resource. So we're in this weird situation that we're getting help from either side. And that was a quandary we did not anticipate. Because, hey, coming from China, watching all the TV shows about America, I thought if there's any shortage, there's no shortage of lawyers in America, right? There's a story about ambulance chasers and all that. I thought you can get a lawyer any day. But here we are, asking somebody to take a case, and nobody's taking it. And at some point, I joked with my friends. I was like, you know what? It looks like our cause is less popular than murder, because the British soldiers accused of murder in Boston Massacre before the American Revolution, even they got legal representation in that unpopular situation. John Adams was their defense lawyer, one of the founding fathers. I was like, we couldn't even get a lawyer. And all the parents are also, in our group, are also stunned. I was like, wow, that's really surprising. So at that point, we had a decision to make. We can either vote. Maybe that's what UC was counting for. Maybe we're not the first one complaining about it. Maybe they have seen complaints all over the years. And eventually, people might have run into the same barrier that we are running into and decided, okay, well, without legal representation, how are we going to pursue this? And maybe that's why UC so far hasn't been sued. And that got us into a investigation into how maybe we can do this on our own. Again, call me naive. People are saying, you're going to sue UC without legal representation? You're nuts. And then I think there are two reasons that we may be in a different situation than the folks who might have looked at the same route before us. Number one is that I think getting plaintiffs to sue UC turned out to be an extremely difficult battle. So that's another thing, totally surprised to me. So Stanley is a case that certainly can be a plaintiff, but originally we received so many complaints from other students and parents, we thought, hey, we can easily compile a large group of students that's going to go together and sue UC. And what it turns out is that initially, when we put out the form for the students to register, we got over 10 students that are interested in being a plaintiff in suing UC. We made it clear they can either be anonymous or be named, depending on their preference. Because we learned from the SFA model, you can actually create an organization and put the members in there so they can remain anonymous and not worry about the social pressure from outside once you're in this lawsuit. But that was wishful thinking. After a few months into it, because all the students who got rejected by UC went somewhere else. They are rejected by University A, but then they went to University B, which accepted them. So in the summertime, when we were putting the list together of the students, a lot of students signed up, but then a few months into the fall semester, all of them dropped out. All of them withdrew. That was a surprise to me. I started to look into it, and then I started to realize how hostile the college campuses are for any students doing this. I'll share one example. It's not exactly college campus, but it's firsthand. It's something I experienced myself. So there was a MSNBC documentary titled Admission Granted. It was a documentary about the Harvard lawsuit, starting from the district level all the way to the Supreme Court, how people on different sides are viewing it, how they see this issue, and why are they taking the position they are. I think it's a very excellent documentary. The reason I mention is that it was screened in San Francisco in June 2023, when we're just about to put together the lawsuit, or getting serious about the lawsuit. And it was in the Fine Arts Museum in San Francisco, in front of an audience of a few hundred people. And after the screening of the documentary is over, the organizer, the host, assembled a panel of moderators, have a discussion. So they invited students from both sides. They invited students who were featured in the documentary on the Harvard side, and the Asian student whose case kicked off the Harvard case. So both of them are staged as this panel. The part that really shocked me was when they were introduced by the moderator, the student, Harvard student supporting Harvard for racial preference in college admission, received thunderous clapping, cheering, standing ovation from the audience of a few hundred people. When the next student whose case kicked off the Harvard lawsuit was introduced, it was silence. I think I heard about 3 or 4 people clapping for that student, and I'm one of them. And that's the kind of social environment you're facing if you're out there saying, I'm going to sue university for racial discrimination. That's the kind of a social pressure the student's going to be on.
So you end up suing without a lawyer.
That's right. We actually sued 4 universities.
And you were told that there's no chance you have.
Yeah, so we mentioned one reason is that the college environment is very hostile to Asian students standing up for their rights. But luckily, Stanley is not living on college campus. So that is one of the important reasons that we may be able to bring this lawsuit forward where our predecessors might have not been able to. And the second reason that we're able to do this is the emergence of artificial intelligence, AI. So our lawsuits are heavily, heavily assisted and drafted and polished by using AI. So I have no idea how to write a legal document, but I was telling the AI, I was telling ChatGPT and telling Gemini, hey, look at the SFA legal case, look at their complaint, and here's the facts about our case against the University of California, write a complaint. And then within minutes, it gave me a skeleton.
And does it go anywhere from here?
Well, a lot of people warn this is going to go nowhere without a lawyer. But there are some indicators that the universities are taking it very seriously. For one, University of California retained WilmerHale, the same law firm that defended Harvard. So apparently, our complaint, our opponent of looking at our complaint is thinking, hey, maybe we need one of the top lawyers to deal with this. So that in some ways is good and bad. Good that we're facing a formidable legal opponent, bad in that sense, but maybe good in the sense that, well, maybe they look at the facts and realize this is a case not easily to be dismissed. And the same thing happened.
And they may change what they do going forward, right?
Change how they're going to run the admissions.
Yeah.
I don't harbor that hope right now. I think unless we get a ruling from the court, they're not going to change it. The other indicator is that the University of Washington also retained a top law firm, and their lawyer leading the case was the former Washington State Attorney General. So that's the level of legal expertise we're facing in fighting this. So we'll see. It's clearly a David versus Goliath situation, but maybe we have a sling in our pocket, and that's AI.
Nan, you're in this position now. Why are you doing this? Because your son is already in Google and he's doing fine.
Yes.
And he's going to do really well.
He's going to do really well.
He probably will start a company next year. But
well, jokingly, maybe not so jokingly, that I think he may still have a chance to go back to college. Because in some ways, college may not be that helpful for teaching him computer science skills. But hey, sometimes I tell my wife how the university is a glorified dating service. Maybe there's a good reason for him to go back to college, particularly if he wants to study something else. Who knows? Or I don't know. I think we don't want to rule out that possibility. And number two, we have a younger son, and he's going to apply to college in 2 years. And if his older brother is facing this level of difficulty, we can only anticipate the level of difficulty that he's going to face. And we don't want him to go through the same pain. And looking out a little bit further, we're doing this for my grandkids. So if they're not stopping this, it's going to hurt us again and again. So I tell some of the folks that, hey, all the people talk about social justice. I have a very simple goal. I want to protect my kids and my future grandkids.
Nan Zhong, parent from California. It was great to have you on California Insider.
Glad to be here.
Let us know what you think of the admission process in California universities. Do you think there should be more transparency? You can always comment or email us at siamak@californiainsider.com. We read all of your emails and comments. I'm Siamak Khorrami. This is California Insider, and we'll see you next time.